All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Victoria Bray. I'm the Associate Director of Recruitment with the Brown University Division of Masters and Professional Programs. We're here to talk about our Master of Science in Sustainable Energy program in Brown School of Engineering. We've got a lot of important information to share with you. I've got Rod Beresford with me as well, who will introduce himself in just a minute to talk more about the program. But for the sake of time, I think we'll get started. So today we're going to talk about the School of Engineering. We're going to talk about the application process, go through the details of how to submit a successful application. We'll talk more, of course, about the program, the context the program is delivered in, the structure, and then we'll talk about career and professional development. We want to answer any questions that you have, so please feel free to use the Q&A to submit your questions. We'll answer them throughout the session, but we'll also save some time at the end for Q&A for folks to dive a little bit deeper for things that might be applicable to the broader audience. That being said, I know there's also a application fee waiver. I get a lot of questions about the application fee waiver that's associated with the event. That fee waiver is going to be applied automatically to your account. So when you go to submit your application, because you attended the session, you won't be prompted for payment. Now that's provided that you use the same email address to register for the session that you used to apply. But if you have any questions about that, I'll also share my email address in the chat. So let's talk a little bit more about the School of Engineering. Rod, you want to take it away and introduce yourself?
Yes, thanks, Victoria. I'm Rod Beresford. I'm a professor in the School of Engineering. I'm an electrical engineer by training, a professional engineer in power systems. Been at Brown for quite a while, and most recently working on our initiative on sustainable energy, and in particular this new program. I'm the academic director for the master's program. It's great to have you with us today. I hope to be able to tell you a little more about what's in the program and also hear from you if you have questions. And we'll try to get to those. This slide is just showing you some views of our facilities at the School of Engineering at Brown. We have a rather new research center, Engineering Research Center, completed in 2017, houses faculty labs, as well as you see on the right there, commons where engineering students gather. There's a classroom in the lower right in that center. And on the left is a view from above of the high bay workspace, makerspace in Prince Labs. That's part of our engineering complex. This is a facility used by the engineering school as well as other departments at Brown, as well as the surrounding community. So it's a great place to go and work on your projects. With that, let's go back to Victoria, hear some more about the logistics of our program, and I'll talk to you again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Rod. So we want to start off talking through the application process for the program. So first and foremost, we have a holistic review process. So the audience for your application are folks from the program who understand the field, understand where you're coming from in the application, and we consider all of the components of the application when we look at your candidacy. So in order to apply, we'll need you to submit transcripts from all post-secondary education. So if you have multiple bachelor's degrees, a bachelor's degree, and multiple master's degrees or one master's, we'll want to see all of those transcripts so that we can get a solid sense of your academic performance since you've graduated from high school. For the purposes of your application, those transcripts can be unofficial. You will have you follow up with official transcripts if you end up enrolling at Brown. We don't need a credential evaluation from an evaluation company like West, ECE, the evaluation company. However, if you do end up matriculating and you attended an institution outside of the United States, we'll eventually have you follow up with that information before classes start. But for the purposes of your application, just your unofficial transcripts will work for us. We require 3 letters of recommendation. Those 3 letters of recommendation should be either professional or academic in nature. For folks who are recent graduates, we recommend that 2 of those letters at least come from academic areas and one from professional. But for folks further out, we understand that more of them might come from professional sources. We'll have you also write a personal statement that talks about your goals, your interest in the program, whether or not you see yourself going into industry, getting a PhD, what that might look like for you. We want to get a really solid sense of your background. Your resume as well will help us with that. So that'll outline your work experience, skills, your education, of course, gives us an understanding of any research that you've had. We don't require the GRE for our programs in the School of Engineering. However, we encourage you to submit them if you've taken the test and they sort of bolster your candidacy. We're now looking at a fall intake. We have two intakes for sustainable energy. We have an intake in the spring and the fall. We're looking ahead to fall now, so you can get an idea of what those deadlines look for you. Our early deadline, our priority deadline is February 1st, especially for folks who have additional requirements for visas. We would definitely encourage you to submit your application sooner rather than later because you get a decision from us sooner rather than later. And then we can sort of start the process of your visa paperwork as soon as it kicks off in the spring. So that's one benefit of the early priority deadline that we have in February 1st. If you submit your application by February 1st, you have up until 2 weeks after the deadline to be able to complete your application. So if you still have outstanding letters of recommendation or anything like that, don't wait to submit your application. Submit your application by February 1st, and then you can follow up with those additional items after the fact. Here are all of our deadlines in a matrix. Like I said earlier, we have a spring start and a fall start. For our spring start, we generally have the application deadline be a little bit earlier, really just to satisfy that visa process because this is a residential program. We need to go through and make sure that we allocate enough time for everybody to be able to get visas, to be able to be on campus in time for our start date. However, like I said earlier, we are looking ahead to fall. Again, that priority deadline is February 1st. Our final deadline is going to be April 1st for everybody who's applying. If you're a current Brown undergraduate student and you're on the call, your deadline is going to be May 1st. Talking a little bit more in depth about the personal statement and letters of recommendation, because these are two items that really give us a sense of you as a member of a classroom community, as a member of your university community, your professional community, whatever that might look like for you. So it's an opportunity for you really that you don't have in any other place in the application. With your personal statement, you have an original piece of writing that you can provide us to get us an idea of what your communication skills are like, your professional writing skills. It also is a way for you to sort of tell your own academic and professional story in a way that sets you up for success in the program. Recommendation letters should come from folks who know you well. It should be more than just a letter where somebody's outlining, yes, I got in the top 10% of the class, got an A in the class, and that's really it. It should be more in depth than that. It should be able to speak to your candidacy, your background, research that you've done, if you've done research, courses that you've taken that relate to the program. So, if whether or not those come from somebody who's taught you in the classroom, your junior, your senior year, in high level coursework, it should really be somebody who can speak to your candidacy more specifically than just the grade that you got in that course. My recommendation is to ask early and to really provide the information that you need to see in your letter of recommendation straight to your recommender. So if you're applying to our sustainable energy program, sort of outline why are you interested in the program? What does the program offer that you specifically want to see in a graduate program? What have you done in undergrad that really relates to that, especially in the courses that you've taken with the faculty member you're asking for letters of recommendation from? Provide your CV, your resume, your personal statement, really a package for them to be able to write a solid letter of recommendation for you. And ask early, and follow up kindly, is my other recommendation for you. Really important that we get the letters of recommendation, all three of them. Another question I get quite a bit is, I have two really wonderful letters of recommendation. I can't submit a third one. Will you be able to review my application? We have to have all three letters of recommendation in order to be able to review your application and release a decision. So that's also important to keep in mind. Again, two from academia and one from professional is going to be the most advantageous split. And here are the dates for the upcoming cycle. An important note about the classes starting, we have folks come to campus earlier for orientation. So because you'll be a first year student, we'll have you arrive at campus earlier. We have a series of orientations where we introduce you to all of the resources that we have for master students at Brown, within the Division of Masters and Professional Programs and the graduate school, as well as, of course, your program, the School of Engineering. Then you can see sort of what are the final, how we move through the cycle. We have all the semesters laid out here in commencement. So that's what the calendar is going to look like for the upcoming cohort beginning in fall 2026. And now I'll hand it over to Rod to talk more.
Okay, thanks again, Victoria. And I'm going to try to give a bit of motivation for why we created this program and what's in it, as well as a little bit of a flavor of the various courses and the kind of topics that we're going to deal with. This slide is something you may have seen before. This comes from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And to the left on this graph is the historical record of average surface temperatures on the Earth. And that gray line, that whole period is basically, my spanning my career. And to the right, where you see those shaded areas and the prospect of continued increase, hopefully leveling off and then even decrease, that's your career. You as emerging leaders in engineering, sustainability, and energy systems are going to be dealing with that. So this transition is a big deal, and not just for a few years, but really that whole time span. Let's go to the next slide, please. So why come to Brown? What's our capacity to address that global challenge? We at Brown already have a couple of institutes that I'm calling out here that deal with some of these topics. The IBIS, as we call it, Institute of Brown for Environment and Society, is a large collection of scholars in the social sciences and environmental sciences, including climate science and climate simulation, including environmental and planetary sciences, as well as sociologists and others. The Watson School, International and Public Affairs, which covers a wide range of topics, including geopolitics, global security, energy security. Within Watson, we have a group, the Climate Solutions Lab, as people specifically looking at the problem of climate change from a global perspective. So these are well-established research institutes at Brown, and in the middle there, in portraying this newer initiative for sustainable energy, which is only a couple of years old now, but is a collection of primarily engineers and physical scientists. So those would be physicists and chemists and others who are focused on research in this area. And so our goal here is to bring the technology solutions and the advances, the innovations on the fundamental level that will contribute to addressing climate change. So one of the goals from Brown's standpoint is that this group of scientists and engineers work with the other Brown scholars and provide, a platform for even greater impact. So one of the things that the initiative has done is create this master's program that you're hearing about today. And that's in part defining the intellectual foundations of these collaborations, and in part, bringing people to campus to help support what we're doing. Let's go to the next one, please. I'm going to give a few slides now that just give some background on the recent past and what we're looking at in terms of this context. So in the last 4 years here in the U.S., there's been a huge amount of federal investment that's directed at this area. Part of it, is specific to climate. Part of it is specific to energy, and some is more general to the manufacturing sector and infrastructure. Let's go to the next slide, please. The IRA in particular was mostly a clean energy catalyst effort, and there's a lot of funding that the federal government's provided that really did incite a tremendous amount of investment, private sector investment on renewable energy projects and other things. And I know, I'm getting a lot of questions about the current environment. Yes, politics is always changing. There have been some clawbacks or cancellations, if you will. Despite that, we're seeing still a growing demand, very strong demand for people who can work in the design, deployment of these systems, renewable energy systems. And furthermore, some of these cancellations have ironically had the effect of actually spurring the businesses to get projects going faster, get something in the ground, make large purchases, possibly buy another company in order to take advantage of these tax breaks that are going to be expiring. So I think actually you're going to see the effects of that for a couple of years. And by the end of the current administration, there actually may have been an increase rather than a reduction in renewable energy investments. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Here on the left, you're seeing one of the recent estimates. There are many of them that are projecting an absolutely phenomenal growth in electricity demand over the next couple of decades. Right now, there are a number, excuse me, a number of factors driving this. Partly it's electrification, and on the right, I'm showing recent growth in EV charging availability across the U.S. So that plus, conversion of residential heat to electric heat pumps and other measures that are addressing this electrification transition. That is one driver. Also, cloud services, which is kind of a general statement about mobile computing and how that's being provided. Yes, also, but recently, and I'm sure you've all heard this if you watch the news at all, read the news at all, is data centers, especially data centers for AI and somewhat for crypto mining as well, is providing an incredible demand push right now, an incentive for utilities and regulators to respond and to create new capacity. And if you look at that graph, if you can believe that number, the last decade, the electricity demand was essentially flat, and in the next 2 decades could actually double. And that's just a huge rate of growth that, frankly, the industry is not well prepared to be able to execute on today. So, there's a lot of question, there's a lot of opportunity, there's a lot of challenge, and that's part of our context. So let's go to the next slide. Here's just a little bit more on sort of what's happening at some of the state level in this country, and that's another thing to bear in mind. Even if there are headwinds in terms of federal policy and sort of the direction of the country as a whole, we have here in the U.S. A system that consists of 50 states that operate somewhat autonomously. California is way out in front in terms of the energy transition. This graph is showing a particular day from 2024 that was notable because there's an hour in the evening where the single largest supplier to the grid in California was batteries. And that's new. The state has built out something like 6 gigawatts of battery storage. And you can see how the solar energy during the day can be used to charge those batteries, which are then discharging in the evening peak and somewhat in the morning. And this is part of how the transition is happening. There's a big story everywhere, but especially some other states like New York, Massachusetts, Illinois, Texas, along with California, are really leading in this transition. And this year in California, there have already been more than 260 days where at least some hours in the day the grid was 100% renewables. So, it may not look like we've made a lot of progress when you view the country as a whole. The fact is, this really is happening, and the transition is pretty far along in some places. Let's go to the next one, please. Okay, so this slide is just a reminder that we have in this country a very great data resource known as EIA, the Energy Information Administration. This dates back to the 1970s and the sort of the first energy crisis, if you will. But we can access a huge amount of public data about energy consumption and energy supplies, as well as forecasts that are based on this changing policy environment. So as leadership changes and brings in different incentives or policies, the EIA through this annual energy outlook is constantly modeling those and offering projections to the future of what our landscape is going to look like. And this is the kind of thing that we're going to introduce you to sort of right at the start when you enter the program. And by the time you've finished it, hopefully you're very conversant with not just this, but a lot of other data sources and tools for analysis for understanding this energy transition. Let's go to the next one, please. So to now dive into the program details a little more specifically, this is a statement of the learning goals that we've set out for the SCM. And you can read through that as I'm talking about. Over on the right, I'm picturing a kind of T structure where the vertical bar there is representing the specific expertise that you bring. Many of you may have done a STEM undergrad degree or are doing a STEM undergrad degree. If not, it may be something else like economics or or public policy or finance, business in some capacity. But that's your expertise. And part of what you'll do in your master's degree is deepen that. You'll take some further courses, possibly some new area, but still in a specialty, a technical specialty. And then across the top, which is very important, that to be knowledgeable and operating in this space, the energy system, you need some understanding of its context, the policy context, the economics of it, how the markets function, and what this transition means. How are we trying to engineer these changes in the energy system? And so that's a breadth component, a lens opening up your aperture, helping you be able to view this subject matter from that broader perspective. If you go to the next one, we can talk some more about the specific courses. So this is where we are today. We did start the program this current academic year, so we do have some students. It was a bit of a soft start because we were late in the cycle to get the approvals to begin this. We decided to go ahead and bring some students in. We have several excellent students doing these courses right now. The fall semester and spring semester each have one custom course that was created new for this program in the fall. It's the chemical engineer Andy Peterson right now is the one teaching it. It's a course on essentially the generation technologies. What are the sources of sustainable energy, and how do those systems function, both from a thermodynamic standpoint and also from its sort of economics and integration standpoint. In the spring term, we have a new course, electrification, which I'm teaching. I've created this course to focus specifically on how the grid is going to be adapting and growing. You saw that demand curve, maybe doubling of demand in the next 20 years. How is that going to happen? And how, if we can manage to take carbon out of the electricity system, how then do we convert end uses to take advantage of that low carbon electricity? Each student in the program is going to choose an economics or policy course related to this topic area. And so I'm showing here this year the four that were the sort of the most plausible choices. There may be others in the future. And in fact, we are expecting to put forward some custom courses in the econ and policy area by next year as well. The other courses you see listed here constitute a focus area that you as the individual student will select and develop with us, with our advice, and also a couple of electives. Let's go to the next one for a little more detail on that. So the focus area is supposed to represent that vertical in your, sort of in your learning goals, where you are going to deepen your expertise in a particular area. And the top group there, showing energy conversion processes and so on, is a more technical focus. You can see a lot of engineering, physics, chemistry courses. Could also be, earth sciences. Could be other science courses. And this is not a restrictive list. This is suggestive and illustrative. You are free to look at the entire Brown curriculum and try to come up with a group of courses that's going to best meet your own educational goals. And that's a very Brown thing. We want you to help construct this program in a way that makes sense for you, in a way that meets your goals and ambitions. The other possible focus area that I'm showing here would be economics and policy related. And again, there are many more courses than what I'm showing, but it's up to you to seek out those that you think are relevant. And it doesn't have to be one or the other of these. You can come up with a more individualized idiosyncratic definition of your focus area. But the point is for you to have a coherent educational goal and to seek out the courses that will get you there. Okay, next slide, please. I'm going to try to speed along a little bit. We have a lot of information here. I think you can look at some of this later if you want to. This is Professor Peterson's course that I mentioned. I'm just going to focus a little bit on the lower part of this slide. You see in the second half of the course, which is happening right now, Each student in the class is selecting a particular renewable energy technology. These are typically things that are either new and haven't been deployed yet, or are tweaks or modifications of existing renewable energy systems. And each one of those five topics you see, from thermodynamics up through impact on other energy technologies, each one of those represents a presentation that each student is making. And so this is taking 5 weeks to get through all these presentations. You are essentially, as a student, you are creating essentially a research paper on your chosen topic and presenting it to the class for discussion in 5 chapters. And so week by week, you're essentially building out not just your understanding, but all of us understanding of that system. And you're getting a lot of feedback from your classmates, but also from us as faculty. So hopefully improving your report and your presentations as you go. All right, let's go to the next one. And I'm going to skip this for now. We'll come back to some of this in a minute. That's a famous Sankey diagram about the energy system in the U.S. Let's skip this for now. I'm sorry, we're just gonna run a little short on time. So this is the spring semester course that I'm teaching. Again, I want to just focus on a couple points here. You can look in more detail on your own. But we will be, as we talked about how the grid is evolving, how it's going to change in the future, we will be using a number of open source platforms or commercially available, sort of industry standard platforms to do some typical calculations, grid simulations, or if you will, energy system analysis, capacity planning, and so on. And these are, I think it's important for you to get a feel for what this actually is like if you're going to be working in this area. These kinds of tools are used by the market operators, by the utilities, by large electricity users, but also by policy analysts and consultancies and others, who are providing advice about how the system can evolve. So this again may be subject to some change, but the idea is to access sort of real world tools and public data sources, and to employ those in projects during the course to see what it really means to be doing energy policy and what it means to be doing energy system modeling. Okay, and to the next one, please. This was sort of a follow-up showing a Sankey diagram for the current annual energy outlook reference case out to the year 2050, and I'm showing this just because it's not necessarily very optimistic given what we've said. If you look at, for example, electrification of transportation, you're seeing the projections are, small slice on the order of 10 to 15% electrified, which I mean, in principle, it could be much, much more. Likewise, renewable energy over on the left, if you look at the fraction of the energy supply that's renewable, yes, it has increased some, but it's still down in the sort of 20% range or less. Again, so I think there's good questions, real questions we should be addressing. What are the barriers to this? Are those real? What assumptions are leading to projections like this, and what can we do to improve that, to make that transition sooner and more successful? Okay, to the next one. Next slide, please. I mentioned that we're working on some new courses. The context there is we will be hiring. We have a search underway, just started hiring a new professor to work in this program to teach new courses and to take over directing the program. So, these are some outlines of the types of new course modules that we're looking at for next year. And again, this right now is kind of my forecast. As you saw previously, there's already a lot of existing great courses in the Brown curriculum that deal with topics like energy policy and politics of climate. So this gives kind of a finer grain and a flavor of the direction this program is moving. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. I want to spend a little bit of time giving some more feel for what kind of topics will show up in the courses. And the point here is to give you the idea that we are looking at what's happening right now today and talking about how people are responding and trying to respond to the things, to the issues that are occurring, literally occurring today. And so this is just from this past summer. PJM, if you don't know, is one of the grid operators in this country. It's one of the larger independent system operators. It covers New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and other states in the Mid-Atlantic and the Upper Midwest. So that first bullet, this was a pretty dramatic, pretty staggering, and pretty upsetting event in the summer where the PGM capacity auction, where this is where they're talking about securing electricity supply for 3 years out. So making sure there's going to be sufficient generation for the demand 3 years out. You can see the cost. This is what was, what PJM is spending on behalf of its ratepayers to guarantee that capacity. It went from, around 2 billion to over almost 7 times as much in one auction, meaning 1 year later. So this is a bit crazy, and you can believe that governors of those affected states are on the phone to PJM and demanding answers. And there's been a lot more since then. So what was driving this, and how does this problem get solved? One clue is the second bullet there, that there's a huge amount of new resource that's waiting to come online. That is, we have developers, we have people ready to build. They're requesting interconnection to the grid and haven't been able to. So that's the backlog, the interconnection queue. So this is kind of highlighting two aspects of current challenges, and these are the kinds of things that we're going to be talking about in the program. Let's go to the next one. This is simply an illustration of the fact that there are tools out there that facilitate this kind of planning, and just the level of detail that's needed, the level of complexity that's in it. I'm sure you're probably aware of that already, but these are the kinds of things that we want to call upon to address those questions. And a lot of this right now is really relating, people say, is really relating to data centers and the demand for connection, a new generation capacity to power this huge build out of data centers. What is that going to do to the grid? And especially, what's that going to do to the ratepayers who will bear the cost of that? And so, given the way we're structured right now and the way regulation has evolved to support the needs as they were, this is falling on ratepayers. And so that's a big change that's needed. And there's also a lot of questions about, will this be a federal jurisdiction issue? Will this be up to the states? Is there going to be some rulemaking that starts to set this in a new direction? So this is real-time policy response to, emerging real-time issues. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. And just to give a kind of a different sort of flavor, what is the prognosis in the longer term? We've talked about a little bit about what's happening today, how California is building out battery storage and solar as kind of the big the big step forward to reaching 100% renewable grid. Longer term, the frontier is really seasonal storage, electricity storage. So how could you get to a position where, excess solar energy generation in the springtime can be saved for summer to meet that summer demand peak? And that's an unanswered question. So, we want to know about emerging technologies, what's their potential to be able to address something like that. And that's really a question of low cost, right? I mean, any electricity storage system in theory could give you that seasonal storage, but you need to be able to do that. That's very large capacity. You need to be able to do that at very low cost. So again, so that's the kind of things that we want to look at, have you look at, and you're doing research in your courses and thinking about this future. All right, next one, please. We're getting near the end on this. I wanted to point out before I finish If in the course of coming up with your program of study, you're taking three required courses, you're looking for three courses to build your focus area, you're looking for two more courses that really are up to you to decide. It could be part of your focus area, it could be something else. If it happens that you can't find what you want at Brown, which maybe not that likely, but if it does, you also have a chance. You can register at Harvard University for any course offered in their Faculty of Arts and Sciences. This is a reciprocal arrangement with Brown. Harvard students can register at Brown, and this is just a listing from this year. These were some courses that I found at Harvard, that might be of interest to students who are coming into sustainable energy. So that's just something to keep in mind as another option. We're a community here, but it's not just the Brown itself community. It's a larger community with collaborators and affiliates outside. Okay, so next slide, I think is maybe my last slide. I think this is the last one. Yeah, just another note to you. Obviously, we have a substantial research faculty in the School of Engineering. We have people in all of those fields listed on the left. It is possible, although not necessarily that easy, to affiliate with one of the research groups. You are coming in as a master's student with a very compressed timeline. You're taking four courses each semester for 2 semesters, and that's it. And that's part of our design here is that this is a program that's going to launch you quickly into hopefully an upgraded, career start in terms of your entry level job at a renewable developer or some other energy office. But that said, if your goal is to be part of the research effort, I would recommend, trying to reach out to faculty during this time before you're actually coming to Brown. If you're admitted to the program, you have several months. You'll be able to make those contacts. If you think that you've got background preparation where you can contribute, it would be really up to you to make that connection to a faculty member, and hopefully find an opportunity to join that group. It's just my only caution there is, your time is limited, and you do have a full schedule of courses for the program. Okay, with that, I want to say I'm eager to hear your questions and try to answer them. I'm going to give it back to Victoria for a few more slides on the supports that we have.
Awesome. Thanks, Rod. So, talked quite a bit about the program. I want to talk a little bit more about sort of more broadly what resources look like for master's students at Brown. So this side, we've outlined some career pathways for sustainable energy master's students, programs or industry placements that our students might consider. The program is fairly new, so the curriculum is really designed with sort of these things in mind. That being said, we have layers of support. So there's the folks in the program, the folks in the School of Engineering who provide industry expertise. We have professors of the practice, folks who've been in industry for years, gone into academia, who are there, who have networks and are there to help guide you. We have staff as well in the School of Engineering and in the various departments. That being said, we also have the Center for Master Student Excellence, and the Center for Master Student Excellence really sets Brown apart from master's programs because we have these really like specific identified resources for our master's students in recognition of the fact that you're with us for such a short period of time, a year, in this case, right? So we want to make sure that you're hitting the ground running as soon as you start defining your goals, what your search looks like, what you want to do after your master's program is done. So I'd really encourage you to check out our master's careers website to get a sense of what that looks like. You can see all of the different programming that we put on, both within the Division of Master's and Professional Programs and in collaborations with the different departments and schools that we have at Brown. So folks are there to help specifically with job searches, resume, cover letter writing, mock interviews, all the way through to the end of your search when you're negotiating a salary package. We have one-on-one advising. We have STEM specific career advisors as well. So depending on sort of what your goal is with the sustainable energy program, we definitely have folks who are there to help. Here's some other sort of career pathways we have. I want to talk a little bit also about the Center for Career Exploration, which we have at Brown. They do a lot of more broad career fairs, recruitment events for companies who are coming. We use Handshake at Brown. So as you're sort of navigating these career paths and considering companies that you might want to work for, keep that in mind. Within the School of Engineering, we have student affairs staff as well as academic folks. On the academic side of the house who are there to assist. The School of Engineering has a lot of really great support, folks who are going to be there for you from now. Tori's on the call. She's answering questions in the Q&A, right? So from the application process all the way to when you're done and when you become hopefully an active alumni with us. And our alumni is another perk of Brown is we have such a great and active alumni base. So really, like I was saying earlier, those layers of support, these are the folks who are there to help identify critical resources for you within the School of Engineering and outside of the School of Engineering, partnering with the Division of Masters and Professional Programs to talk through anything that you may need, accommodations in the classroom, industry questions. They're there to connect you with those folks who might be of service to you while you're here at Brown. So, with that being said, I think we're ready to start to take some questions. I know folks have been submitting them. You can definitely be in touch with us. If you have any questions, we will put our email addresses in the chat so you can be in touch with us directly. So, I'm going to go ahead and open the Q&A. First question, would we be the first cohort for the Masters in Sustainable Energy at Brown? No, we do have folks who've joined the program before the program is what, a year, I think we're a year old. And we've had some folks enroll for fall, and then we'll have folks enrolling for spring. And then what is the expected number of applicants? We can't really predict that. The number of applicants really changes year by year, and so the admit rate really changes year by year, especially for a smaller program.
Yeah, Victoria, if I could just add there,
Yeah.
this is Brown University. You may be thinking that the program is super selective as the undergrad college is, but we are not at that point yet. I just want to assure you that, we are not getting thousands of applicants for this program. If you meet the requirements, there's a very good chance you'll get an offer because right now we're starting small, we're growing. Probably the first few years it's going to be like that, where it's I say the chances of admission are much higher, assuming you clear the bar. Thanks. Yeah.
No, that's a great point, Rod. Thank you. Because I think a lot of students have that question. Here's another good question for you. Are applications from students in the humanities fields discouraged, or how do those students without a technical background fare in the program?
Yeah, I know there's lots of questions like this, and of course, energy systems is a very, very broad topic. We don't restrict or require a particular major, so it's not the case that you must have a STEM degree. However, the required courses that you're doing for the program do assume some technical background. So the question is really what courses or what material, what subject matter do you have to have studied? And it's going to be very helpful if you have some university level math and science. And we're pretty flexible in terms of what that is. But if it's zero, you may be very challenged. And so that would be the question for you would be, are you willing to do what it takes to, come up to speed? And it's not impossible, but that's challenging. So I hope that's clear. It's like the prerequisite really should be viewed as some amount of college level math and science. Um, I hope that, and I'm happy to take more specific questions if either one-on-one or here if you have them.
I think you just answered like five of the questions that were in the Q&A, so that
Yeah.
worked out really well. Uh, Next question is, are there scholarships available for specifically for the sustainable energy program?
There are not at this time, and that's unfortunate. I know it's a big concern for people, and what's the way this will work at Brown is once this program has more of a history. So if we've had several years of enrolling students and building up some reserves, at that time there probably will be at least modest scholarship monies available. So right now, I'm afraid not. And that means that you need to be looking at other sources. Most master's students are self-funded. I know it's challenging, but there are ways you can address that. And I'm happy to talk to you one-on-one about possibilities for that. Yeah, thanks.
Fantastic. So then the next question is admission to the program rolling? And the answer is no. We have a priority deadline, so we'll release the priority decisions, but it's not if you apply now, you won't get a decision from us in 2 weeks. We'll release all of our priority decisions after the priority deadline and then release the rest of the decisions as they come through. Is that right, Rod?
That's right. And as just to kind of further amplify, I mean, because we're still in this situation of probably having enough seats for all the qualified applicants. So I think, in that first deadline, that priority deadline, we will look at everyone who's gotten their materials in. And there's some number of some fraction of them will get offers based on, we think they can do the work and can benefit from the program. And then we'll be looking at the another tranche when the final deadline has passed. I don't we expect ultimately this program is going to steady state be in the sort of 20 to 30 students a year. So right now, we're going to be ramping up to that. I don't expect that there's going to be uh, an sort of oversubscription. But you never know. And I think it is an interesting topic, and there's a lot of interest among students to participate here. So I would encourage you, if you're serious about the program, meet the priority deadline, and we would like to see your application and review it early. And that's kind of in making your best shot, your best chances for an offer of admission would be at that time. It's not your only chance, but it's making sure we sort of see your file first.
All right. So, another question, can people apply to multiple programs for fall 2026? You can apply to a maximum of three programs, master's programs for the same cycle. Uh, can folks submit a GMAT score instead of a GRE? Would we consider the GMAT?
Um, well, since the GRE is not required, a GMAT would not be required either. If you feel that that's indicative of your abilities and helpful to your case, sure, we're happy to look at it. I think since it's probably not the case that we will see a lot of those, it may not be hard, it may not be that easy to use that information in evaluating you, but that's fine. We'd be if you've already taken it, we're happy to see the score. Sure.
Question about housing. So we do have a limited amount of graduate student housing available at Brown. There's a couple of different ways. We have housing, we like own some houses that have been converted into apartment buildings in the College Hill area where the majority of the School of Engineering courses are. And then we also have an apartment building where our graduate students live in the Jewelry District, which is just a 15-minute walk from College Hill. Housing is limited. It's first come, first served basis. So another reason why to apply by that priority deadline is so that you can get on the housing wait list earlier, because the earlier you enroll in the program, the earlier that, we can start all of those things like getting you on housing wait lists and the visa process and all that good stuff. So limited, the majority of our graduate students live in non-Brown affiliated housing, but there is some graduate housing available and the priority is given to first year graduate students. Does economics count as a form of math or technical knowledge for the program?
Yes, although I'm assuming that you've studied economics and gotten beyond the introductory level. So there's plenty of math in economics. If that was your major, that's really going to count. We've also, we've admitted a student from finance and accounting and IT backgrounds. So, we're pretty flexible. I think we just want to ensure that you're going to be comfortable and able to function with the assignments and the readings and subject matter. So, you may not have seen power systems, you may not have done thermodynamics. Those are some of the topics that we rely on, but it's not like those are entire courses. Those are some of the foundational ideas. So, you can pick up a certain amount, but if you've never done calculus, you may be struggling. If you've never seen electricity, you may be struggling. So, that's just we want to evaluate that as just that you have a decent chance to succeed in the program. So yeah, econ is fine. But you should think about does this set of courses really meet your goal? Are you trying to gain a technical education? If you are, you need to start from the proper prerequisites. If you're trying to gain, further instruction in your specialty area, that's a different question. Or if you're looking for this credential for reasons, to help your employment prospects. So those are important things to spell out in your application, so we understand what's your motivation for the program and what are you trying to get out of it. Good.
Well, on that note, I think we've answered all the questions in the Q&A and
All
in the
right.
ones that were submitted before the session. So thank you for joining us, everybody. And thank you, Rod and Tori, for the presentation. And we'll hopefully see your applications at least soon.
Thank you all for joining, and please reach out if you have other questions. It was great to have you here today. Take care.
Thanks.